I wanted to pose the question, how do we talk about our subject? How do we explain what computer science is to people? How do we try and draw them in? I mean, is that a hard business? Do we find that quite difficult sometimes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And so I just wanted to, I know I'm projecting now, so this is going to be a little bit more difficult. I wanted to float some ideas about stories for say, about 10 minutes, but then because I'm a lecturer, I'll talk for longer than that, so maybe that'll be 15 minutes. And then what I want is for all of you to take those ideas and just chat about them, and see whether you think they fit, or they might be of some use, or that you might have, it might spark something in you, and you might think of a better way of talking about it. And then we'll spend, however long time we've got left, 5-10 minutes at the end, just to get some words from you about things that have come to you that you think might be interesting there as well. So you might want to have a pen and a paper down, because I'm not going to have things up here that I can then show you in terms of the ideas. But of course you could say, if the way I think about explaining computing isn't really grabbing to you, then it's obviously not interesting enough, therefore you don't need to write it down. But let me just, which one shall I start with? Well, I'll start with a slightly harder one and go on to the easier ones. Okay, so Elizabeth, when she was here, talked about some work that I've been doing with Richard Connor and Strathclyde University about trying to understand what's really at the bottom of computing. Now, I don't think this is a story you were going to have with a parent, by the way, but I just think it's an interesting categorization of the things that make up computing. So I'm going to start right at the beginning. In the world, we have things and we have processes, actions, activities. That's what goes on in the world, isn't it? There are things and we have actions and processes that operate over those things. So that's that's right at the bottom. And then around those things, we can, our brains are, part of what's being human, is we have ways of describing those things. Those things have characteristics, they have qualities, they have attributes. Or, whether it's a process or whether it's a thing, I can draw out information. That's really what information is. So don't get hung up on information as in information versus programming, or information systems versus programming. I don't mean that. I just mean that in human existence, information is the characteristics that we draw out of things that we see around us. So, the characteristics of that chair is blue and it's about this high, and so on and so forth. And the characteristics of a process might be that it's very fast, or that it can be done by a human, or that I can mechanize it, or all sorts of things, or it's made up of these steps. Or there's characteristics about a process as well. And we choose to pick out the characteristics that are relevant when we choose to describe things and talk about them. So what have we got? We've got things and processes. And then we've got information. And then the real bit that we start really getting involved in is we do modelling. We develop models. That's really what we do. That's a huge part of what we do, is we develop models because the point is, so what are we doing there? We're describing the things and the processes in some other frame of reference. So let's be completely concrete about this. If we write a program, what we're doing is we're describing a process and some things that are being processed in this language that we have in our programming language. So the point is, there's the actual domain, and then there's the ways we have of describing it and creating descriptions and all of that. And so there's that modelling part. So we need to learn all about modelling and what modelling is. So we've got things and processes, we've got information that we draw out, characteristics, and then when we model, we use that information, we capture that information that we've picked out of the things in our models. Right, we're nearly there. There's only one more level above modelling, and that's reasoning. And reasoning is about trying to determine whether the model is actually accurate or a good fit for the thing that we're trying to model. So the model is written in one frame of reference, and the thing we're trying to model is in another frame of reference. And at some level, we want there to be a good match, whatever good means, between the model and reality, in some sense. And so that's what reasoning is. And of course, think about reasoning, let's just think about reasoning in terms of programs. When you make a plan for your program, you're basically making a model of the real world, or whatever it is you're programming. So your plan is a model of the world, but then when you write code, that's in fact another model of your plan, effectively. You know, and so that reasoning process comes in. That's what everything like testing and debugging and all of that. It's you trying to say, okay, well, you know, I'll run lots of acceptance tests through my program. It's a way of me saying, well, is my model actually accurate with respect to the thing I'm trying to model? And if it isn't accurate, if I turn out not to get the results I expect, then I need to start thinking, right, well, where did I go wrong? Is it because my model in the plan level isn't an accurate model of the real world, or is it that my implementation is not a correct model of my plan? Anyway, I don't really want to say much more about that, but I just want to put out there these levels, and I think almost any computing activity you think about will somehow fit in there. That we've got at the bottom, like things and processes, and then we've got information, because that's, you know, everything we talk about, everything I'm describing, it's all a language I'm using to try and describe real stuff and real things, you know. So it's all about information, and then we build models of it, and then we reason about those models. Now, one way of talking about this as a science is that we're required to do scientific thinking every time we write a program. So, in the real sciences, we talk about people like Newton. And what did Newton do? He saw an atom drop, and he thought, oh, I wonder how that works. And he thought about it for a bit, and he came up with a model. You know, his laws of motion and all of that, Newton's laws of motion. And that was a model of the world, and we spent tens, hundreds of years trying to work out whether that's the right model. And what do we do in schools? We assume it's the right model, and we teach it to kids. One model. But what are you doing when you write programs? Every time you write a program, you're creating a model of the world. You're doing what Newton did. And then when you run that program and test it, you're doing what everybody thereafter has done, trying to work out whether Newton was right. But you're doing that yourself. Right, so what I'm trying to say is, I think that this is a contentious thing to say in your school with science teachers about, but you are doing much more science than any science class. You're doing much more real science than any of those hard sciences, because they're just teaching cut and dried stuff that everybody's known about forever. Whereas what you're doing is you're teaching them how to think like a scientist. So, there's one story just to be thinking about. The other story, and I'm really pleased with this one, I just had a brainwave while I was sitting down at the front at the beginning there. So, Industrial Revolution. So that was the point where we started mechanising things all over the place. And it used to all be done by humans, and so we kind of found clever mechanical ways of basically just mechanising or automating things that humans had to do before. And we also found that we could get power into it as well. So that was a major part. You know, it didn't all have to be human power. We could get machines to provide us with power. So we could start getting kind of mechanised activities going somewhat independently of the humans. You still usually require a human operator. And sorry, losing my train of thought. You required a human operator, and there are tricky things, these stories. Oh yeah, that's right. There was typically, like, it was the age of the inventor. You know, so you've got these wacky machines that were made and such like, and there was a different machine for every different task. So you kind of create a fancy loom that could be mechanised, or a sewing machine for sewing, or a what's his name for this, or a so-and-so for that. You know, and in some ways they quite closely copied the human activity. And so there are all these different machines that get produced. And I don't know how many of you, well, you all teach Scratch, don't you? And so something I find when I teach Alice, which is quite like Scratch, is that one of the reasons that Alice is easy, probably with Scratch as well, is if I say in Alice, you know, if I think my problem, I want the elephant to go to the dog. What's my code? Elephant. go-to dog. It's not really very difficult, is it? You know, it's not a massively complex intellectual problem. So, what's my point? In the Industrial Revolution, they were tending to take mechanisms and things that we knew about already and just do a little bit of a shift to make them automatic in some sense. Okay, so that's the Industrial Revolution. And the point about the Industrial Revolution is that if you didn't manage to find a way of mechanising your way of doing stuff, that was it, you were dead. Your livelihood was dead, you know, and so whole swathes, Quintin was telling me just the other day that the reason cotton went way ahead of linen, I mean linen used to be more popular than cotton, but cotton went way ahead because they worked out how to mechanise the industrial production of cloth, cotton. But there was a problem in doing that with linen for quite a long time that they didn't understand. So linen kind of fell behind and cotton took over. It's fascinating. Anyway, so these stories are great. We should think so many more of them. Anyway, but right, so whole industries died because they couldn't mechanise. And so here we are with the computing revolution. And what is it that captures and epitomises the computing revolution and makes it interesting? Well, again, we've got machinery. But in fact, we don't have all of those separate machines. We've got one machine. We've got one general purpose machine. You know, it has the power of a Turing machine. They're all the same. You know, no matter what people say, they're all the same. It's all the same at the bottom, isn't it? It's all bits and bytes and, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? And so it's a very general purpose machine, but we can bend it to do so many different things. I mean, just look at your phone, it looks like there's 10 or 20 completely different kind of machines in there, doing your mail, doing music, doing pictures, doing, you know, tweeting, everything. There's all of that stuff, but it's all, one of the things to get across to kids is it's all the same underneath. And the really big intellectual challenge with the phone, with the general purpose computing device, is not only have you got to think up what it is you want to do, and think up how to automate it like the inventors in the Industrial Revolution, but you've then got to take it down so many levels to the programming languages, the general purpose programming languages you have at your disposal. So, you know, I teach my students Alice, and they can do dog move to cow without any trouble at all. But then you try and get them to do something, you know, like that, but you've got to work down at the level of variables and coordinates and, you know, all of that. And it's just like, that's where the difficulty comes. It's being able to think at these different levels. But we've got this one general purpose machine. And so we're being affected in just the same way as the Industrial Revolution. I mean, if you can't do this stuff in your industry's dead. It's going to be the same, undoubtedly. And whole swathes of jobs are going where it has been industrialized, but with computers very well, but where it's been computationalized, or some horrible word like that. Okay, so does that story make sense? The idea, you know, that what's difficult is that we've gone down levels to this one general purpose machine. Yeah.
Would it not be more productive to say that in the Industrial Revolution we were replacing muscle power? In the Computer Revolution, we're replacing brain power. That's a
fabulous story as well. So that's a nice way of summarising what I'm saying. Okay, so yes, so the point about the computational mechanism is it can do the information processing tasks that were in the brain. But still, we don't do those information processing tasks by making a mechanical machine for each different one. Like, you know, IBM came along and they made mechanical computers and, you know, mechanical devices to do adding and all that. I think the difference here is that we've got this one general purpose machine, and that's what you have to target everything towards. Right, probably my time's nearly running out, so this is a brainwave I had, that's why I was thinking down here. I was thinking about that general purpose thing and the specific machines of the Industrial Revolution compared to that. And I just don't know, for some reason, I just suddenly thought of evolution. And that animals actually used to evolve the bits they needed to be successful in life. See, that to me feels rather like the Industrial Revolution. You made the machine you wanted. But then the human brain came along, and that was one general purpose processing device. And immensely quickly, that one general purpose device has been applied to so many different areas that humans are everywhere on the planet, and that one general purpose device has solved a vast array of different problems. And I just felt there was some kind of synergy between that and the fact that the Industrial Revolution produced all these different separate machines, and things moved forwards quite quickly. But then this one general purpose device that computers come along, and look how fast things are changing. Well, I don't know where to take that one. Yeah, I just think that's interesting. Right, so go into your huddles, just find 2 or 3 people around you, and just discuss what you think of those stories and whether you changed them and how you might do things differently. Did anything come up as we were talking? What have you come up with? Peter's got microphones. Anything at all, or was it just a nice chat, or did you say that Quintin guy is a complete idiot?
I like the idea of the general purpose brain. The point of evolution, of course, is that we didn't evolve the general purpose brain in order to do something. Evolution, I guess, is not purpose. You know, it's giraffes don't develop long necks to reach the long leaves. The ones with the short necks died out, they didn't reproduce. So I don't think the analogy holds up there, but I do like, Laurie and I both like the idea of the general purpose computer, and that's allowed us to do all these new tasks. So that's
I was thinking that because the general purpose brain isn't hardwired, we've got an ability to pass on knowledge and learning in the same way as we pass it on through computer code and libraries and all that kind of thing. So the knowledge and wisdom is no longer hard-coded in the machinery, it's in the software, and that's sort of...
And I say to Roy that, you know, chimps have got pocket calculators, we've got supercomputers.
Chimps have got pocket calculators and we've got supercomputers, right? Yeah. Well, so we can just work on these stories, that's the point. You know? It's just that like we're always trying to find out ways of describing to people what we do and what we are and why we're special. Right, who's next?
I'm the back one, so I will pick up somebody. And the next guy.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
I like the analogy, and I kind of boiled it down to 2 sentences. Industrial revolution replacing muscle power, creating different machines for different processes. Computing revolution replacing brain power, creating different processes using one machine. So even though we're producing the one machine, but we've got to use an awful lot of thinking and modelling and engineering just to get the processes to work on that machine.
That one machine, that's right. So it's in some senses, it's a harder, more intellectual process to actually get the thing down onto the machine than when it was very physical and visible and cogs and wheels and things like that.
Okay, go ahead, yep, up here. No, they're all like rabbits coming headlights.
I often think as teachers we're the world's worst. You know, when you ask a question in a class, you get that kind of panic from everybody. Is there anybody on the other side who would like to just make a comment?
First of all, he said. Please, everybody, welcome to the press.
Technology. Who would use it? Okay, I just was thinking to myself that, you know, we've got this one machine that does all these different tasks, but actually really the machine's not doing the tasks, we are. It's our brain power, isn't it?
We've done all the work.
We've done all the work.
Yeah. To set the machine up to do the thing in the same way as the inventor, who's always sort of a wizard with the crazy hair and all of that, was the one in the Industrial Revolution who thought it up and then the machine did it. So yes,
But I always tell the kids, you know, that it's their brain power that's going to work it out.
So,
and they're going to then put that in the computer. And it'll do the work really fast because we've got all these fast processing powers in there, but it's them that's going to have to work out the problems.
I think that's really, really important always. Yes, it's not about being a computer. It's the exact opposite. It's having the human intelligence to work out how to bend the computer to your will. That's right. Do you think if you're trying to encourage the pupils to, you know, you said every time you write a program you're being like, you know, Brunel or something, would that excite them or not? I don't know. A link to history, I don't know. Some of them, yes, some not.
Hi, Quintin. Questions?
Going back to the sort of the problem, how do we talk about computing? I think one of the challenges that I face when I'm trying to defend us is that quite often when it comes to computational science and computational thinking, I get asked the question, how does computational thinking vary from thinking in computational strategies in other contexts? So, for example, maths or other subjects.
So I come straight back to you in a sense there and say that the way we do our modelling is sort of different to the way maths do their modelling. So when I talked in the beginning about those levels and things and processes and information and modelling and reasoning, it would be incorrect to try and pretend that they are peculiar to computing, because obviously other areas use those skills. But I think we're trying to think of what are the foundations that we need, but that may also be useful for other subjects. So that's why we've got all of that in the picture. But I've been trying to get this clear in my head. I'm not a great mathematician, so any of you who are greater mathematicians than me, which is probably most of you, you will be able to argue this if I'm completely wrong. But the way I think about it is just that idea that the way mathematics does its modelling is it tries to capture it all in just one equation or set of equations. And then even when it's trying to model a process, it's sort of all done in that one piece, whereas it's the way we have the kind of simulation, you know, it's the way we have, we model in a different way, and that requires a different kind of thinking, but in some ways perhaps it matches what we're trying to model in a better way. And in some ways that you know, it might sound big-headed to say that we actually model in a better way, but evidently we do, because all the sciences are beginning to realise that computational modelling is the way to do it. And they're getting breakthroughs, not from using pure mathematics, but from doing computational modelling.
I think we need that almost written down, almost in a way that we can say, here we go, get back.
We are doing something different to
We are
maths.
doing something different. This is the reason why
Yeah.
you need to support us in that direction.
Okay.
I think just to very quickly sort of pick up on that, it's the case that a lot of other subjects use information. You know, they make use of information, they create structures, they follow processes, but there's very few subjects where people are actually creating their own structures, they're creating their own processes, they're following processes that are you know, laid down, so they're essentially just learning the procedure, whereas we're actually teaching them the skill of how to describe a process in a precise way so that it can be automated, and that's a really useful skill.
That's the modelling, definitely, and that's exactly what you were getting at. It's not about creating a load of automatons who can go away and follow instructions. It's about you're coming up with the instructions, you're doing the modelling. It's that different frame of reference thing. You're describing the models rather than you're not in the model, you're describing. Right.